Hey y'all, so we're still reading Black Marxism. We are on part 3, Black Radicalism and Marxist Theory, chapter 9, Historiography in the Black Radical Tradition, which is Du Bois's chapter, and we are talking about Black nationalism. So, Black nationalism, but wait, let me go back real quick. So the Black nationalism is like this section is in understanding the special character of the American Communist movement and the party's policies towards blacks, and one of the contributing events was Black nationalism. So second, in the United States, Black immigration from the South resulted in the formation of northern urban Black communities and subsequently a new form of racial consciousness, Black nationalism, in regards to like the Negro question from communism. Okay, Black nationalism. For blacks, in sociological and political terms, one of the most important events in American history at the time of the First World War was the migration to the sites of urban and particularly northern industry. With the outbreak of the war, the European immigration of laborers had been severely restricted by both the exigencies of war and congressionally imposed controls. In addition, wartime conscriptions had removed thousands of white workers from their jobs, while at the same time, war was opening markets to U.S. goods and increasing the demand of labor for labor. Do I know how to read? The war then produced. Oh my God! I need to re-screw my bed together. The war then produced a labor scarcity in American industry. In such a labor market, workers had an advantage in their demands for wage increases, and as the term of the war lengthened, job action as a labor tactic became more diffused among workers, including the semi-skilled. Wait, can I pause real quick? You know when we learned about the World War I and how like women were doing stuff and blah 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 blah, and you got that woman that's like this, whatever. I think that's World War I. They never like my history class has never spoke about Black nationalism. It never spoke about Black people, and that really irks me for reasons, a lot of reasons actually. But you know, it's kind of like okay, you know. But anyways, mm-hmm. Northeastern industrialists and their counterparts in the Midwest attempted to resolve the problem of increasing labor costs and labor militancy by recruiting Southern and Caribbean blacks. As we have noted, at the same time, the overwhelmingly majority of American blacks lived in the rural South. Despite the campaigns of terror and violence directed against them, and which had been a constant undercurrent in their lives since the Reconstruction, most of them were still reluctant to break historical, social, and cultural ties by migrating to confrontations with northern antipathies. What? Antipathies. Antipathies. Let me look that up. La li di di la. Antipathies. IES.
Antipathy.
Okay, antipathy, feeling of strong dislike or opposition towards someone or something. And it's so interesting how it's like, oh well, the North freed the slaves. No, they didn't. They were just as racist. To meet this problem, corporate managers had developed a sophisticated propaganda campaign to excite the interests of Southern black workers. Labor recruiters were sent south with instructions to fill the empty freight cars, often accompanying them black newspapers, some subsidized by northern industrialists, led by the Chicago Defender, ran articles on the opportunities for employment in the North, just juxtaposed with accounts of the anti-black activities of Southern whites. Robert Abbott, editor of the Defender, was relentless. And like the quote says, Abbott put on a national edition in his weekly aimed at Southern blacks. It carried in red ink such headlines as 100 Negroes murdered weekly in United States by white Americans, lynching, a national disgrace, and white gentlemen. Am I allowed to say this word on YouTube? That's not P. What's P? K, P. No, but what's Q? Oh, Q. So this is P. E. Grapes. I don't like to censor myself, but I don't know what I'm allowed to say on YouTube. RAPEES, colored girl. Accompanying a lynching story was a picture of a lynch victim's severed head, with the caption, "Not Belgium, America." Sorry, you know when you like read stuff and you're just like, and you can just like imagine that in your head and you're just like, oh, that's like uncomfortable. That's uncomfortable. And especially to like, I mean, it's important to know what's going on, of course. But it's just like, I can only imagine the type of like eerie feeling that could produce among people. Oh, Jesus. Okay. Poems entitled Land of Hope and Bound for the Promised Land urged blacks to go north, and editorials boosted Chicago as the best place for them to go. Want ads offered jobs at attractive wages and around Chicago. In news items, anecdotes, cartoons, and photos, the Defender crystallized the underlying economic and social causes of black suffering into immediate motives for flight. The promise of economic integration into some of the most advanced sectors of American production had its impact. As noted, an estimated 250,000 to 1 million black workers and their families migrated during the war years, substantially increasing. What year was this? Oh, okay. My grandfather was not born at this time. He was born in 1934. So he was doing the Second World. No, he wasn't. He was a kid. So his brother was doing Second World War. No, he wasn't. He did some wars. They was in the military. My grandfather did not. I don't think he left, but he was in the military. But his brother, he went to South Korea and he was killed in South Korea, unfortunately. Oh Lord. I just had to write down, like, look at the times and stuff. The promise of economic integration into some of the most advanced sectors of American production had its impact. As noted, an estimated 250,000 to 1 million black workers and their families migrated during the war years, substantially increasing the populations of the black communities situated in the critical industrial areas east of the Mississippi. This migratory flood coincided with one emanating from the English-speaking West Indies. The poverty and deteriorating well-being of Caribbean blacks were the direct legacies of colonialism. Importante. Tens of thousands of West Indians came to the United States during the first decade of the 20th century. It was work too that attracted them, and so they located in precisely the same black communities that received the internal migration. One unusual and complicating feature of the New York ghetto in Harlem was the presence of two quite different non-white populations. By far, oh, this is like the Harlem Renaissance, y'all. Wait, right? Yeah. I need to make sure my dates are right. Girl, I'm so excited to talk about the Harlem Renaissance. Yeah, I'm right. So that's gonna be our next book. I'm so excited for our next book. Okay. Sorry, I just get excited sometimes. One unusual and complicating feature of the New York ghetto in Harlem was the presence of two quite different non-white populations. By far the larger was the group of Southern migrants, but a minority not to be ignored and originated in the Caribbean islands, chiefly the British West Indies, with some of the Dutch West Indies, Cuba, and Puerto Rico. To the 5,000 foreign-born blacks who lived in New York in 1900 were added 28,000 more during the war decade. In 1917, the New York Times estimated that they formed 1/4 of the population in Harlem. The congregation of these peoples, the deep disruptions that accompanied their translocations, and the persistent hostility with which they were confronted forced them onto each other politically and socially. As such, it became necessary for them to develop social and political forms that would transcend the particularistic identities due to specific historical differences. It was within this particular milieu that both the UNIA and the African Blood Brotherhood ABB emerged, and both would have enormous consequences on the American Communist Party's efforts at organizing blacks. It was never, whenever people say blacks, it's okay. When white people, you say black people. Because I'm saying blacks a lot, and so sometimes when black people say it, I think other people think it's like normal. No. Thank you. It has never, because it sounds racist. It does. Sorry. Actually, sorry, not sorry. How are you going to text me and then not text me back? It has never been possible to characterize the United Negro Improvement Association in precise terms. Its dominant ideology, I have a book for that. Actually, no, keep reading. Its dominant ideology was eclectic, incorporating elements of Christianity, socialism, revolutionary nationalism, and race solidarity. As an organization, it exhibited a range of structures responsive to circumstance and personality. Responsibility for policy and decision-making varied as well. They were formed in accordance with ideological factors, the circumstances of situationally crucial individuals, the nature of the issues, and the momentary fortunes of the organization. And we're going to get more into the ABB in the second book because it's talking about like the Harlem Renaissance, which I'm so excited about. So, yeah. 2. The organization did change over time, responding to the political and social significances of the interactions between itself and its social and political environment. Nevertheless, observers had most frequently typified the organization as ideologically a Back to Africa movement, or for very different reasons and with implicit organizational characterizations as the Garvey movement. It was never quite so obviously simple. The UNIA's main thrust appears to have been towards the development of a powerful black nation economically organized by a modified form of capitalism. Importante. Girl, it's like that's the good part about rereading is like you read the first time and then you're getting more information as you're like, oh, okay, like having that information repeated. This powerful entity was to become the guardian of the interests of blacks in Africa, where it was to be located, like the Black nation, and those dispersed in the African diaspora. The nation was to be founded on a technocratic elite recruited from the black peoples of the world. Let's look up technocratic, because I don't think I wrote that note down. Okay, technocratic is a form of government in which the decision makers are selected based on their expertise in a given area of responsibility, particularly with regard to scientific or technical knowledge. Technocracy follows largely in the tradition of other meritocratic theories and assumes full state control over political and economic issues. This system explicitly contrasts with the representative democracy, the notion that elected representatives should be the primary decision makers in government. Though it does not necessarily imply eliminating elected representatives, decision makers are selected based on specialized knowledge and performance rather than political affiliations, parliamentary skills, or popularity. That sounds a little bit more reasonable, because I would rather an expert determine information than a government person. Like right now, we have like government personnel just determining, like, wait, pause. Yeah, like, you know how like right now there's like been a rollback in regulations in the food, and now in the food we got salmonella. We have what else is there? What's that other one? Not salmonella. Listeria. If we just kept the people that studied this in charge, like, I would rather the experts, personally. Mind you, my mom's a doctor, so. But also at the same time, nope, we're just gonna put a period and keep reading. This elite, in turn, I don't know about elite, shut up. An elite would turn create the structures necessary for the nation's survival and its development until it was strong enough to play its historical role and absorb and generate subsequent generations of trained, disciplined nationalists. As a number of historians have noted, in many ways, both directly and indirectly, the UNIA had incorporated elements of the self-help movement identified with Booker T. Washington, but without the restrictions imposed upon that movement, the UNIA had pushed the concept to its logical conclusion. In pursuit of this ideal, the organization had developed structures that anticipated a national formation. The UNIA had possessed a proto-national bureaucracy. I don't know if I wrote that one down either. Let me underline it to make sure I put the definition under. Where's technocratic? Okay. Okay, proto-nationalism refers to the early forms of national consciousness that emerged in societies before fully developed nationalism took hold. Oh, okay. Security forces with women, auxiliaries, a national church, and international networks of chapters, in parentheses, or consulates, and the beginnings of an economic base consisting of a series of small businesses and service industries. Hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of blacks were enrolled in the organization. Though recruitment went on primarily in the United States and the West Indies, the UNIA possessed dues-paying members in Africa and Latin America. The scale of the organization made the UNIA by far and away the largest nationalist organization to emerge among blacks in America. And I never learned this in high school, which makes me angry. I'm sorry. I was bending the book a little too hard. In these terms, the organization's significance still remains unrivaled in U.S. history. Since most histories of the organization were written by its critics, distortions of the UNIA bound in the literature, they were especially marked with regard to its founder and principal organizer, Marcus Garvey. He's a Leo. If you look at Marcus Garvey's outfits, it screams Leo. It screams Leo energy. I swear to God. And he's so cute. I love his hats. Anyways, I love him. Even Du Bois, while participating in the opposition to the UNIA, had contributed exposés of its financial practices and bitter characterizations of Garvey. But the one predominant tactic of the UNIA's critics was to identify the organization with Garvey, thus tending to reduce their criticisms to studies of aberrant personality or political opportunism. Robert Bangal, one such critic, writing in A. Philip Randolph and Chandler Owen's paper, The Messenger, described Garvey as a Jamaican Negro of unmixed stock, squat, stocky, fat and sleek, with protruding jaws and heavy jowls, small, bright pig-like eyes, and rather bulldog-like face. Damn! Boastful, egotistic, tyrannical, intolerant, cunning, shifty, smooth, and suave. I think that's how it's pronounced. I'm not going to say that out loud because that sounds like I'm going to say it like I'm dumb. That was a dumb statement to say. Okay. A-B-A-R. I see. O-U-S.
Avaricious.
Avaricious. Having or showing an extreme greed for wealth or material gain. Damn! As adept as a cuttlefish in beclouding an issue he cannot meet. Prolix in the nth degree in devising new schemes to gain money of poor, ignorant Negroes. Gifted at self-advertisement without shame in self-laudation, promising ever, but never fulfilling, without regard for veracity, a lover of pomp and tawdry finery and garnished display, a bully with his own flock, but servile in the presence of the clan, a sheer opportunist and demagogic charlatan. Damn. They was like, let's go in on this man. Of others with more charity came to the same point. Claude McKay would write in his Harlem Negro Metropolis. What time is it? Okay. The movement of the Marcus Garvey in Harlem was glorious with romance and riotous, clashing emotions. Like the wise men of the ancient world, this peacock-parading Negro of the New World, hoodooed by the negromancy of Africa, followed a star, a black star. A weaver of dreams, he translated into a fantastic pattern of reality the gaudy strands of the vicarious desires of the submerged members of the Negro race. There has never been a Negro leader like Garvey. None ever enjoyed a fraction of his universal popularity. He winged his way into the firmament of the white world, holding aloft a black star and extorting the Negro people to gaze upon and follow it. In this way, the UNIA became known as the Garvey movement. This has always implied or bespoke the presence of autocratic authority and demagogy. Underline that word. As principal spokesman and symbol of the UNIA, Garvey became the object of study, rather than the masses of people involved in the making of the organization. Robert Hill, Tony Martin, and Theodore Vincent were three historians who have recently begun to correct that fault. The UNIA's official demands set down in the Declaration of Rights of the Negro Peoples of the World included the right to vote, a fair share of political patronage, representation on juries and on the judge's bench, and full freedoms of press, speech, and assembly for all. The UNIA sought these basic freedoms primarily to create and strengthen a separate black world, while groups like the NAACP would utilize these freedoms primarily to create an integrated world. Socially, the UNIA was a huge club and fraternal order. For Garveyites, there was the fraternal camaraderie of all the black people in the world. UNIA parades, Saturday night parties, women group luncheons. Okay. Etc. had a significance far beyond that of providing social diversion. Their affairs were designed to build a pride and confidence in blackness. Okay, eat it up. Okay, Garvey. Clearly, The UNIA possessed a substantial cadre and several tiers of secondary leadership. It was a complex organization functioning on a number of levels simultaneously, and its popular appeals and attractive political style were combined with pragmatic programs of racial achievement. Pause. My teacher, when we were reading this book, he was talking about the importance of having that community, the importance of fun. You know what I mean? But I'll find my notes. I'm so excited to go over to do the discussion parts because I'm going to use like the notes from his class. But it's really interesting. My leg is falling asleep. And its popular appeals and attractive political style were combined with pragmatic programs of racial achievement. For the 5 years of its peak development from 1918 to 1923, it became the most formidable movement of the history of American blacks. Like the UNIA, the organizational cadre of the African Blood Brotherhood consisted largely of West Indians and Afro-Americans who had developed professionally as social agitators and journalist propagandists. Its founding organizers in 1919 were Cyril Briggs, Nevis Island, Richard B. Moore, Barbados, and I don't think I said that right, Nevis, and W.A. Domingo, Jamaica. Later, in the period between 1920 and 1922, Otto Hiswood, Suriname, and a number of important Afro-American radicals joined the movement, including Otto Hall, Haywood Hall, Harry Haywood, Edward Doty, Grace Campbell, H.V. Phillips, Gordon Owens, Alonzo Isabel, and Lovett Fort Whitman. The largest membership was in the New York Home Office, but there were sizable contingents in Chicago, Baltimore, Omaha, and West Virginia. The ABB also established groups in the Caribbean area in Trinidad, Suriname, British Guyana, Santo Domingo, and the Windward Islands. At its height, the ABB had only 3,000 to 5,000 members, most of them ex-servicemen. The number was kept small, in part by design, but the possibilities of danger and the Brotherhood's militancy, nationalistic, and left-wing ideology undoubtedly alienated and confused many people. The ABB saw itself as a tight-knit, semi-clandestine paramilitary group which hoped to act for a worldwide federation of black organizations. The Brotherhood's official program stated, in part, in order to build a strong and effective movement on the platform of liberation for the Negro people, protection of their rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, etc., all Negro organizations should get together on a federation basis, thus creating a united, centralized movement. For the bulk of its dozen-odd years of existence, the ABB was a secret paramilitary organization dedicated to the immediate protection and ultimate liberation of Negroes everywhere. Go ahead. This aspect of its ideology, however, was not a true reflection of its origins or future. Ooh. Okay, sorry. When the Brotherhood was first proposed in Briggs' monthly magazine, The Crusader, that we're going to return to in the next book. I'm so excited. It was designated the African Brotherhood for African Liberation and Redemption. Even earlier, though, the Crusader had advertised itself as the publicity organ of the Hamitic League of the World, June 1919, page 1. This so-called Hamitic League, with headquarters in Omaha, Nebraska, set itself the task of uniting the so-called Hamitic peoples, the chief ethnic group of North Africa. One of its leaders, George Wells Parker, made contact with Briggs, and they agreed to support each other. The reference to the Hamitic League was removed from the Crusader in the issue of January 1921. The Brotherhood's beginnings inadvertently exposed the degree of identity confusion among its founders. A similar confusion would mark its appeals and the designation of the audience the organization presumed to address. In the second decade, the audience would be transformed from Hamitics to Africans, then Negroes, and then finally black workers. Behind the fluctuations, however, was the premise enunciated by Briggs in 1917. Departing from Garvey's plan for a Negro state in Africa, because that's low key like neocolonialism, or yeah, like going back. Wait, am I right or am I wrong? Let me think about it. Let me put a pin in it because we're already at 30 minutes, and then in the discussion we'll talk about it. Okay, departing from Garvey's plan for a Negro state in Africa, he advanced the idea that the race problems could be solved by setting up an independent Negro nation on American territory. Considering that the more we are outnumbered, the weaker we will get, and the weaker we get, the less respect, justice, or opportunity we will obtain. Girl. It is not time to consider a separate political existence with a government that will represent. Is it not time? Excuse me. Our opportunity we will obtain. Is it not time to consider a separate political existence with a government that will represent, consider, and advance us? He argued. Briggs, for one, had spun away from the paternalistic projects of African colonization and African missionizing that had concerned racemen like Cromwell, Turner, and Du Bois, and his fellow West Indians, Blyden, Garvey, and J. Albert Thorne. I was right about like neocolonialism, whatever. Let me put a little pin in that. So far. Let's do orange. I don't have any oranges on here. Or barely any oranges on here. Oh, nope. It seems fair to say that the African Blood Brotherhood had begun as a revolutionary nationalist organization. It soon, however, came to be influenced by the socialism of Lenin, Trotsky, Stalin, and state Bolshevism. And once several of its cadre were absorbed into the American Communist Party, it came to be accepted that in both the United States and Africa, the Brotherhood would act as an ideological, organizational, and military vanguard. In its closest rapprochement with CPUSA, it was conceived as the core of a liberating force developed in the hinterlands of Africa and the shock troops of a black and white revolutionary movement in the United States. Finally, the Brotherhood, or at least prominent members of the organization, Briggs, Moore, and especially Harry Haywood, appears to have provided to the party the immediate ideological stimulus for the development of the Comintern's position after 1928 that blacks constituted a national question in America. Okay, Within a year or two of its founding in 1919, the Brotherhood's leadership in New York and Chicago was acting in concert with officials of the communist movement in attempting to infiltrate subversion of the UNIA. The leaders of the UNIA, having found difficulty in respecting black nationalists who had conceded the principles of autonomous leadership and race-first actions, were now the subjects of intrigues, public charges, and recriminations and betrayals. I have to sound it out in my head. Yes. Though several historians have traced the antagonisms between the Brotherhood and the UNIA to supposed differences on the issues of the roles of socialism and white workers in the black movement, they do not appear to be the crux of the matter. Much of the rancor, I don't know that word. Let's look it up. I asked for a dictionary for Christmas. Feeling a deep-seated hatred or anger or ill will. Pronunciation.
Rancor.
Rancor. Thank you. Much of the rancor between the organizations was a result of the Brotherhood's insidious tactics, its growing dependence and domination by the CPUSA, and its persistent attempts by Briggs, Domingo, Moore, and others to unseat Garvey and the rest of the UNIA's Negro Zionist. I'm so excited to have a discussion about this section, guys. I'm so excited. Negro Zionist leaders. According to Tony Martin, Briggs's several cycles of position reversals towards the UNIA were begun in 1921. The anticipation of the UNIA's first international convention, Briggs, offered Garvey a proposition that Garvey, with his international mass movement, perhaps millions strong, should enter into a program of joint action with the ABB, an obscure organization of 1,000 or two for African liberation. Briggs then took the opportunity provided by Garvey's assembled multitude to do a little recruiting for himself and passed around copies of the ABB program. The next ploy in Briggs's attempt to impose a Communist United Front on Garvey was to have his white communist friend, Rose Pastor Stokes, address the convention. She expatiated. Oh my god. We're almost at 40 minutes. We're almost done with this section.
Expatiate.
Oh yeah, expatiated. Speak or write at length or in detail. She expatiated on Russia's desire for free Africa and the need for black-white working-class unity. She then called on Garvey to take a stand in relation to her communist overtures. Garvey was polite but non-committal. The final stroke in Briggs's strategy was to have ABB delegates to the convention introduce a motion for endorsement of the communist program. The motion was debated and tabled. The ABB, equipped at the setback, then immediately published a Negro Congress bulletin on August 24th, almost entirely devoted to the, oh Lord, Scrulius? Wait. Oh, la la li da da da. Scurrilous, meaning making or spreading scandalous claims about someone with the intention of damaging their reputation. Scurrilous. Devoted to a scurrilous misrepresentation of the UNIA's convention. Whatever motives Briggs and his associates might have had, this pattern of contradictory approaches to the UNIA would characterize the relations of the two organizations until the demise of the Brotherhood in the 1930s. In the party, Briggs, Moore, Haywood, Otto Hall, Fort Whitman, and others found a complementary radical element and a potentially international ally for the struggle against colonialism and world capitalism. Within the UNIA, Garvey, for one, felt much more sympathy for the Russian communists than for the Brotherhood and its American communist colleagues. Okay, this is where we pause, and then next is Blacks and Communism. This one's a little bit longer, so we're not going to record in this. Oh, it's a little bit longer, so we'll record that. I'll probably record it tomorrow. Anyways, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful day.